From a young age, the echoes of disloyalty and sorrow shaped my world. My father's affairs weren't mere hushed scandals. They bled into our daily lives, festering like unhealed scars. His constant absences, unexplained disappearances, and the persistent smell of unfamiliar fragrances on his clothes clashed violently with my mother's quiet, steadfast dedication. As a child, I questioned why she endured such pain, clinging to a fading belief that love was an unbreakable bond, resilient against all trials. Yet their fractured marriage stripped away that naivety, exposing a truth where faith could splinter and affection morph into a blade that cuts deepest. I vowed to rewrite my story. Meeting Elaine in my teens felt like fate. She embodied compassion, integrity, and a vision of partnership I craved. Together, we nurtured a connection rooted in honesty and equality, a deliberate contrast to the dysfunction I'd witnessed. Our wedding day marked the start of a life I swore would defy the turmoil of my past, anchored in the calm I'd always longed to create. But certainty is fleeting. Foundations I thought unshakable would soon tremble, teaching me that no amount of resolve can armor a heart against life's ruthless twists. The night Elaine decided to spend it with another man wasn't just another evening. It marked the end of an era in my life. She believed I'd absorbed the blow, that chasing momentary euphoria would leave no lasting wound. Maybe she was right about the thrill, but she underestimated the jagged edges it would leave in me. What she dismissed as a harmless indulgence, I recognized as the strike that would sever the final thread holding us together. One drowsy afternoon, as I lingered over coffee, replaying fragments of our history, how we'd collided in high school, briefly strayed during youthful conflicts, yet always circled back like planets bound by gravity, my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed, and I answered half-heartedly, bracing for a telemarketer's script. Instead, a voice like gravel replied. "You don't know me, Mr. Carter," the man said. "Andrew Wallace. I work with Elaine. We need to talk, today." Confusion prickled my skin. "Is she hurt?" I demanded, adrenaline spiking. "She's unharmed," he said, urgency sharpening his words. "But there are things you deserve to know. Meet me at noon." Reluctantly, I agreed, still unsure if this was some kind of joke. At noon, I met Andrew outside a restaurant, and he suggested we walk to avoid being overheard. As we strolled towards Central Park, he revealed that Elaine had been spending a lot of time with a man named Ethan Smith at work. They went to lunch together every day, and today, they were openly discussing plans for tomorrow night. A dinner at the Hilton, followed by dancing, and then spending the night together. My stomach sank. "Are you telling me they're sleeping together?" "Yes," Andrew confirmed. "He's already made reservations. Your wife is out shopping for clothes for the date." I felt numb. "How do they think this will work?" I asked. "She thinks you love her enough to let her experience another man. She believes it won't affect your marriage." I stopped walking, struggling to process everything. "Why are you telling me this?" Andrew's expression hardened. "I was married for 9 years. My wife had an affair, and the legal system screwed me over. Now, I'm trying to help someone avoid my situation." We talked for a while longer before he left. Left alone, I was forced to confront the painful possibility that my marriage might be over. It frightened me how quickly I had come to consider it based on a brief conversation with a stranger. I thought back to my childhood, the pain my mother endured with my father, his drinking, womanizing, and multiple affairs. I remember asking her why she stayed, and she simply replied, "I love him." One day, when I was about 11, my father took me to his girlfriend's house. I ended up walking home after getting bored of petting her dog. When I told my mom where I had been, she didn't confront him, but 2 days later, he spanked me for breaking a plate. Looking back, I realized it was because I had snitched on him. After witnessing my mother's suffering, I couldn't imagine condoning Elaine's affair. Even thinking about it made me sick. Call me whatever you want, but I wasn't going to live through what my mother did. Eventually, my mother left my father, and life improved for both of us. She remarried and is happy now. Elaine and I now live in a house owned by my mother and stepfather. I found myself caught in a dilemma. Should I confront her or wait and see? As a salesman, I knew the importance of being proactive, not passive. But in this situation, if Andrew was right, I wasn't sure I even knew Elaine anymore. She was aware of how strongly I felt about infidelity, so I felt I had to take action. But how do you act when you're not even sure if what you're facing is real? I mapped out every possible scenario, prepared for the worst, and asked myself what I could live with. If I couldn't handle the worst, I'd have to make a different choice. I made up my mind. I was going to get answers. I hired a private investigator, spent a significant amount of money, and set a plan in motion. Now, I had to figure out how to act when I got home. When I arrived, Elaine greeted me with a kiss and a hug, just like she always did. I had to decide how to respond. I could act normal, which would let her plans unfold without interruption, or I could hint at what I knew. If I did that, she might deny everything and hope it all blew over. I wasn't about to live with that uncertainty. On the other hand, if I acted suspicious, she might abandon her plans altogether. I chose to act normal, but it wasn't easy. Either she was a fantastic actress, or as Andrew said, she was so confident that she didn't feel the need to hide anything. Around 11 p.m., I went upstairs to get ready for bed. Elaine was already asleep, so I showered and then lay awake, unable to sleep. At 6 a.m., she got up, dressed, and went downstairs. A few minutes later, I followed, but she was already gone. We rarely left without kissing each other goodbye, but today felt different. It was Friday, usually a busy day in RV sales, but I decided to take the day off. I called my boss and then contacted the dealership's attorney for a recommendation on a divorce lawyer. He referred me to his wife, but warned me that she didn't take cases from husbands whose wives had cheated. After calling her, I met with the lawyer. I explained my conversation with Andrew Wallace, and she asked why I had hired an investigator based on an unverified story from a stranger. I told her about my parents' marriage and my strong stance against infidelity. She advised me to wait and confirm Andrew's story. If Elaine was as confident as Andrew said, she'd have nothing to hide. I told her I wouldn't tolerate any affair, big or small. And if Elaine went through with her plans, I wanted the divorce paperwork ready by Monday. If Andrew was lying, I'd have to accept that. But if he was telling the truth, I wanted to be prepared. By 1 p.m., I was back at work, trying to sell a van to an elderly couple. At first, I doubted they'd be interested in a 45-foot motorhome, but after spending time with them, I realized they were in great shape, and their relationship was full of love and energy. I envied their bond and hoped Elaine and I could have that too. After the test drive, they decided to buy the van, and I gave them a discount for my commission. It felt good to help them, but it also made me think about my own marriage and how it could end up. I checked in with my investigator and was reassured that everything was set. At 5:30 p.m., I pulled into the garage. Elaine's car was in its spot, and the house was quiet. No dinner cooking. I stayed calm, placed the package from the investigator on the mantel, and sat down to wait. At 5:45 p.m., Elaine came downstairs, looking stunning in the outfit Andrew had described. She had her overnight bag in hand. "Wow, you look gorgeous. What's the occasion?" I asked, trying to hide the knot in my stomach. "One of the guys at work has been asking me out, and I thought it'd be fun," she replied casually. "What do you mean? Go out with him? Like a date?" I pressed, confusion creeping into my voice. "Yes," she said, not missing a beat. "We thought, since you're the only man I've ever been with, I'd like to sleep with someone else. We're going to dinner, then dancing and spending the night at a hotel." I felt my blood run cold. I couldn't believe how calm she was. "You can't be serious," I said. "You're really spending the night with another man?" "It's no big deal," she replied dismissively. "Just one night of fun. I'll be back tomorrow, and it'll be like nothing happened. I might even pick up a few tricks you might like." "There's no way I'm letting you go out tonight with someone else," I said firmly, my voice tight with anger. "Don't be ridiculous," she shot back. "I'm serious, Elaine. If you go, our marriage is over," I said, each word heavy with finality. Just then, we heard a car honk from outside. "That's him," she said, heading for the door. I acted quickly, blocking her path as I reached out, my voice pleading, "Please, don't do this." "I have to go," she replied, stepping around me and kissing me on the cheek. "I'll be back by noon tomorrow, and everything will be fine." She was already heading for the door. "If you leave, you won't have anywhere to come back to," I warned, my heart sinking with every word. She rolled her eyes. "Now you're really being stupid. Enjoy your night thinking about how much fun I'm having. We'll talk tomorrow. Good night." With that, she kissed me again and left. I didn't watch her get into the car. Instead, I walked over to the fireplace, turned off the recorder, and carried the trash bags upstairs. It took nearly 2 hours to remove all traces of her from the house. I cleared out her closet, her bathroom vanity, and even took her birth certificate, high school diploma, and social security card from the safe. I packed everything, her family photo albums, her school awards, and the Remington bronze statue from her grandfather, into her car. After rolling it out of the garage and parking it on the street, I left the keys on the driver's seat. I climbed into bed, but sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned for hours, unable to get any rest. Finally, I made coffee and tried watching a Hogan's Heroes marathon, but it didn't help. For the next 2 days, I couldn't sleep at all. I felt like a zombie. By 11 a.m. on the third day, I finished a sale with the Parkers and was home by 11:45. The locksmith had already delivered a new set of keys, and the investigator was there, handing over the video footage from the past 18 hours. At 12:30, I was sitting in front of the TV, watching the tapes when I heard the doorbell. When I opened the door, Elaine stood there, saying, "Hey, my key doesn't work. And why is my car outside?" I blocked the door. "Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore. And your car's outside because I don't want it in my garage." "What are you talking about? This is my house," she demanded, trying to push past me. I stood firm. "I told you last night that if you got in that man's car, you wouldn't have a place to come back to. All your stuff's in your car." "You can't be serious," she said, shocked. "It was just," she began, but I didn't let her finish. I slammed the door in her face. She pounded on it, so I opened it again. "If you don't stop banging, I'll call the police and have you arrested," I threatened, though I knew I probably couldn't do that. But at that point, I had nothing left to lose. "You can't do that. This is my house," she yelled. "This house belongs to my mother and stepfather," I replied. "And they've decided you don't live here anymore. Now, leave." She stood there speechless, so I slammed the door again. I went back to watching the tapes, but my anger kept building. After a while, I glanced out the window and saw Elaine sitting in her car. I went to the kitchen for water, but instead, I poured myself a gin and tonic, frustration growing inside me. Then the doorbell rang. This time, it wasn't just a ring, but relentless, constant. I was ready to snap. I imagined tearing into her and feeding the pieces to the dogs. I opened the door, and there stood her sister, Brenda, still pressing the doorbell. "Elaine's crying at my house. I want to know why," she said. "Screw it," I thought, and slammed the door in her face. But the bell rang again. This time, I yanked the door open, slamming her hand against it, causing her to nearly lose her balance. "Ring that bell one more time, and I'll break your fingers one at a time," I warned. Brenda pushed against the door, holding it open. "Talk to me, please." I stood there for a moment, then slowly opened the door to let her in. She looked at me, confused. "I thought you loved Elaine. I can't believe you kicked her out over a stupid disagreement." "Stupid disagreement?" I scoffed. "She told me she wanted to go out. But did she tell you she was going out with a guy from work? Did she tell you they were planning dinner, dancing, and then a hotel room?" I didn't wait for an answer. Instead, I played the audio tape I'd made the night before. Brenda listened, her face falling. "I had no idea," she said, shaking her head. "Yeah," I replied flatly. "Neither did I. So what are you going to do?" she asked softly. "Divorce her?" she added, almost as an afterthought. "No," I said bitterly. "This marriage is over." Brenda nodded and stood up. I walked her to the door. She hesitated, looking at me, and I opened it, escorting her out. The rest of the evening and all of Sunday, I did nothing but eat grilled cheese sandwiches and drink gin and tonics. Self-pity took over. Then, there was another knock at the door. It was Brenda again. "You said if I rang the bell one more time, you'd break my fingers." "So I knocked," she said. "I've been talking to Elaine all day. What you told me is true." I motioned for Brenda to sit down, then asked, "So, what's the real story?" Brenda looked down, admitting it was a disaster. They went to the hotel, drank too much, passed out, and when she woke up, she realized what she'd done and insisted he take her home. I scoffed. "That's the story you're sticking with? Do you believe her?" Brenda asked. "I believe she and this guy spent days, maybe weeks, planning this. They talked, got close. He knows more about my marriage than I do. They planned to cheat, and even if nothing happened, it's still a betrayal." Brenda stayed silent, and I looked at her. "You don't believe her, do you?" "No," I replied firmly. "Even if nothing happened, I'm not forgiving her." "Not in this lifetime," I added. We reached the door. She hesitated and asked, "When this is all over, can we still be friends?" I took a deep breath. "Elaine and I are getting a divorce. If she fights it, it's going to get ugly. By the end of it, you probably won't want to be friends with me anymore." Brenda smiled faintly. "I see. Well, I think I'll miss you." She placed a hand on my cheek and kissed me on the other cheek softly before leaving and closing the door behind her. Since Saturday, my phone had mostly been off, but Elaine kept trying to reach me until she eventually gave up. I spoke briefly with her father, who tried to convince me that since nothing physical happened with Ethan, it wasn't a big deal and I should move on. I explained to him, just like I had to Brenda, that divorce was inevitable. After realizing that, he sighed and hung up. On Monday, I called my attorney to update her on the weekend's events and instructed her to serve Elaine with the summons that day. She assured me it would be done by the end of the day. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Elaine's office number. I decided to answer. "Hello?" I said. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. This is Andrew Wallace. I thought you might want to know there was some excitement here today." "Really?" I asked, intrigued. "Yes. Your wife was served with a summons. After reading the papers, she fainted. An ambulance took her to the hospital. After the paramedics left, Ethan Smith picked up the papers, looked them over, and almost fainted himself. As serious as the situation was, a part of me found it darkly amusing, but I had no sympathy for either of them. "I'll keep you posted on any developments," Andrew said. "Please do," I replied before hanging up. A moment later, my phone rang again. It was Brenda. "Elaine's in the hospital," she said. "So?" I replied coldly. "I just thought you might want to know," she said. "I didn't ask," I snapped, more sharply than I intended. "Are you really that heartless?" she asked. "My coldness comes from your sister," I answered. "I warned you this would go south. This is just round one." The following weeks played out as expected. Elaine tried to talk to me countless times, but I ignored her. Her parents urged me to listen, but I refused. My mother tried to comfort me, but I insisted I was fine, though she didn't believe me. Andrew Wallace called daily, and I actually looked forward to his calls. He was the only one who knew everything going on with Ethan. Elaine came to work, but just sat at her desk, only meeting with her lawyer. She and Ethan barely spoke, at least not in front of anyone. As for me, I was just stalling. Our lawyers set up a meeting, Elaine, her lawyer, my lawyer, and me. It was the first time I'd seen her since I kicked her out. She looked thinner and worn out, and I was surprised to see Brenda there. Elaine's lawyer asked, "Are you sure you want to be here, Brenda?" "I'm here for Elaine," Brenda replied. "That's not what I asked," I said, staring at her. "But fine, stay." Elaine was already sitting at the table, so we all took our seats. Her lawyer started. "Mrs. Carter categorically denies the infidelity and asks for the divorce petition to be dismissed so they can work on saving the marriage. She's willing to go to counseling." My lawyer and I exchanged a glance before he spoke. "If there was no infidelity, can Mrs. Carter explain her actions that night?" We all looked at Elaine. "I'll be happy to," she said calmly. "A gentleman friend picked me up. Does he have a name?" My lawyer asked. "Of course, but his name isn't important. Nothing bad happened, so no need to involve him," she said. She repeated what Brenda had told me. Champagne, dinner, more champagne, getting too drunk to have fun, passing out, and then coming home to be kicked out. "Just a misunderstanding," she sighed. "I made a mistake. I love my husband, and I want him to forgive me." I looked at Brenda, who nodded in agreement. My lawyer, who had been quiet until now, asked, "Okay, let's assume everything you've said is true and no sex occurred. Was there any touching? Anything that wouldn't pass the husband test?" "Absolutely not," Elaine insisted, with Brenda nodding. My lawyer glanced at me, and I glanced back. I picked up the remote, pressed play, and a screen dropped from the ceiling, showing Elaine walking to Ethan Smith's car in our driveway. He opened the door for her, and they kissed long and passionately. Then they got in and drove off. I paused the video. "Line number 1, I said, looking around the room. Everyone sat up straighter. Elaine turned pale, and Brenda just stared at her sister. On Thursday, after Andrew Wallace's call, I spoke with my investigator. We planned to videotape Elaine's every move on Friday night, starting when Ethan Smith arrived at our house. Thanks to Wallace, we knew the location of their date and the room number they had booked. My investigator had already arranged access to their suite before check-in. "You said there was no inappropriate touching," I asked Elaine. "Yes," she replied, though with uncertainty in her voice. I pressed play on the video. It showed Elaine and Smith at the Hilton's restaurant, with his hand on her rear. "Line number 2, I said, looking around the room. Elaine glanced nervously at her lawyer, while Brenda simply examined her nails. The video continued, showing Elaine and Smith ordering champagne, finishing it, and rushing to the elevator. I had paid my investigator $11,000 to get into their hotel suite before they checked in. For minutes after entering, Elaine was already entertaining Smith. Then, Elaine screamed and ran out, with Brenda following her. I paused the video. "Seems my client forgot a few details," I said. Elaine's lawyer quickly packed up, and the sisters left. Later, I returned to the dealership and Brenda approached my booth. She paused, then asked if she could sit down. "Sure," I replied, motioning to the chair across from me. We sat in silence for a few moments before Brenda broke the quiet. You knew, didn't you? She asked, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Knew what? I asked, confused. When I came to your house that Saturday, she continued, you already knew they were sleeping together. I sighed, the weight of it settling in. Yes, I admitted. I watched the video before you arrived. Brenda's eyes widened, but she didn't interrupt. I continued, they weren't just fooling around, Brenda. They were doing it. She's my wife, and she let it happen. A long pause followed. Then she asked softly, why didn't you tell me? I thought she'd admitted herself, I said, the words heavy. I thought she'd agree to a divorce. If she had, I would have spared you and your family the details. I've always liked your parents. The room fell quiet again, the tension thick. My phone rang, breaking the silence. This is Andrew Wallace, came the voice on the other end. Just so you know, your wife called yesterday and quit. She didn't even clear her desk. Thanks, I said flatly. Let me know if you hear anything else. I hung up. Brenda opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the office loudspeaker. Logan, you have a call on line 6. I nodded to Brenda before stepping away to take the call. It lasted about 15 minutes, during which Brenda remained still, her gaze distant. When I returned, she looked at me with a sense of finality. She's gone, Logan, Brenda said quietly. What do you mean, gone? I asked. She packed up and left. Probably moved into her own place, Brenda replied. I don't think so, she added softly. She asked me to tell your parents she was sorry for disappointing them. It wasn't just your parents she disappointed, I replied coldly. Yeah, we know, she said quietly. Brenda stood up, glanced at me, and walked out. Later that night, I watched the full video again. My lawyer still had the earlier copy, but I had my own. Watching it made me numb. There was no romance, no love. He didn't care about her feelings. The pain and anger swirled inside me. Part of me wanted to scream in agony. Another part wanted revenge. My thoughts were a mess. I fell asleep in the chair, consumed by thoughts of the betrayal. Over the following weeks, my lawyer tried to arrange another meeting with Elaine and her lawyer, but he couldn't get in touch with her. A month passed, then another. I checked in with Brenda and her parents, but no one had heard from Elaine. I thought about hiring a tracker, but my lawyer advised against it. I canceled her credit cards and took half the money. The records showed she hadn't used any of the remaining funds. If she stayed gone long enough, we could file for desertion, but we'd see. Then the phone rang. Logan Carter? Yes? I answered. Good morning, Mr. Carter. It's Andrew Wallace. Do you remember me? Of course, Andrew. How's everything going? Not bad, he replied. I just wanted to update you on my situation. Remember my divorce? Yeah, I said. Your ex is living with her boyfriend, Andrew confirmed. That's right, he continued. Turns out the guy's a thief. He convinced my ex to steal from her company, and now they're both in jail. I chuckled. Good for them. Are you still at the same place? Andrew asked. Yeah, I replied. That's actually why I'm calling, he said. Since your wife left, things have been quiet. Ethan Smith's been keeping to himself, but lately, some of his calls have been interesting. Interesting how? I asked, intrigued. He was talking to your wife today, Andrew said. I frowned. How do you know? I overheard him say, I miss you too, Elaine, Andrew explained. I sat up straighter. Did you hear where she is? I got her phone number after he talked to her, Andrew said. He left his phone on the desk, so I grabbed it and wrote it down. Nice work, Andrew, I said, impressed. Thanks, he replied. Keep me posted if you hear anything else. I got the number, passed it to my attorney, and decided to make the call. The phone rang. Someone picked up. Hello? Hi, Brenda. It's Logan. What do you need? She asked, her tone flat. Do you or anyone in your family know anyone in Florida? I asked. Why? She replied cautiously. Because I think Elaine's there, I said. Why do you care? Brenda shot back. I want a divorce, and she needs to sign the papers, I explained. When are you going to ask her? Brenda replied, sounding uninterested. I don't need to ask, I said. My lawyer is already handling it, but it would save him some trouble. She lives in Fort Lauderdale. She lives there? Brenda asked almost reluctantly. Why didn't you say anything before? I pressed. Over the next few days, Brenda gave me Elaine's address and confirmed that Elaine knew the divorce papers were ready. I gave the address to my lawyer, who immediately sent the papers. Brenda and I had planned to have dinner together, followed by watching the video at my house. However, she made it clear that revenge wasn't part of the plan, and she wouldn't sleep with her brother-in-law. The next morning, Andrew Wallace called with an update. Hey, Mr. Carter, just a quick head up. Ethan Smith quit his job today. No notice, just packed up and left. He said he's moving to Florida, Andrew told me. Interesting. Thanks, Andrew, I replied. By the way, how's everything with you? My wife confessed to the theft and pled guilty, Andrew said. She'll get a lighter sentence, but her boyfriend's in for serious time. I chuckled at the news. Good for them. We chatted a bit longer before I ended the call. I immediately dialed Brenda. How long have you known Ethan Smith was moving to Florida? I asked. There was a long pause on the other end. How long, Brenda? I pressed. A few days, she finally answered. How many times have they seen each other since she moved in with him? I continued. 4, she replied quietly. She's been there twice, and he's been here twice. 4 times? I couldn't believe it. You knew she was still seeing him, and you were okay with that? Logan, she's my sister, Brenda said, her voice soft. I ended the call, my frustration boiling over. Moments later, Brenda called again, but I ignored it. I spent some time in my cubicle before walking over to the repair shop to talk with one of the mechanics, a retired Army vet who understood what I was going through. After updating him on the situation, he offered to help, but I refused. No one's worth going to jail over, I said. I just want to be rid of her. I can make that happen too, he offered. I laughed bitterly. Nah, living with myself is punishment enough. Later, I received a call at the dealership, but I told the receptionist no more calls for the day. When I got home, I found Brenda's car parked in front of my house. I pulled into the driveway, and by the time I reached the front door, she was knocking. I entered through the garage to avoid her, but she kept knocking. Eventually, I opened the door. You're not welcome here, I said. Listen, she began, but I shut the door in her face, this time without slamming it. I heated up some spaghetti and meatballs and went to bed, falling asleep by 10 p.m. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, I saw Brenda waiting for me. I tried to pass her, but she grabbed my arm. Damn it, Logan, listen, she started. I pulled my arm away. You don't have anything I want here. You let her come back to me while she was sleeping with that fool, over and over, and you didn't tell me. All 3 of you can rot in hell. I didn't see Brenda again for a while, but she stayed in touch with my mom. By then, everyone at the dealership knew what had happened, making for a long, uncomfortable day. Later, my mom called and invited me over for dinner. She made Italian food, but the evening took an unexpected turn. I talked to Brenda today, she said. Mom, if you bring up this family stuff again, I'm leaving, I warned her. Logan, listen, there's something you don't know, she said, her tone serious. I know everything I need to know, I shot back. Elaine cheated, and I'm divorcing her. Good, but what about the baby? My mom asked softly. What? I shot up from the table, stunned. She's pregnant, my mom explained. You didn't know? My voice cracked with disbelief. She asked us not to, my mom said, sounding guilty. You listened to her and ignored your own son? I said, hurt and frustrated. We thought you might need more time to forgive her, she said, her voice filled with regret. Forgive her? Have you lost your mind? I snapped. Do you remember what it was like living with a cheater? Honey, things are different now. People are freer to try new things, she said, trying to explain. I stormed out, completely baffled. My mom had been through hell with my dad's cheating, and now she was telling me that cheating was okay for my wife. I couldn't believe it. I drove aimlessly for a while, eventually ending up at a car dealership. I had my keys with me, so I went inside, found the employee lounge, and laid down on the couch. I tossed and turned until nearly 5 a.m. before falling asleep. I woke up at 10:30 a.m. and found that my boss had put up a sign asking people not to disturb me. When I finally got moving, one of the salesmen told me that my boss wanted to see me. I made my way to his office, feeling drained. Logan, he said, looking up from his desk, you need some time off. I can make that happen. You remember the Parker couple? The ones you sold the blue Prius to? Yes, I replied, not sure where this was going. Well, last week, Mr. Parker had a heart attack in Vancouver. He's fine now, but they need someone to bring the car home, and they've asked for you, he explained. Sounds perfect, I said, grateful for the distraction. When can I leave? Tomorrow, he said. Janie will book your flight and use the company card for expenses. Great. I'll get packed, I said, relieved. How long should I take? Take 4 days to get there, but take 10 to get back. The Parkers aren't in a rush, and we don't need you back too soon. Hand over your deals to Ben, and he'll handle them. The following day, I flew to Vancouver. Mr. Parker was hooked up to a number of machines, and Mrs. Parker was fussing over him, trying to make him as comfortable as possible while he grumbled. It was clear they just wanted to be near each other, and it brought a smile to my face. Mrs. Parker, it's good to see you, I greeted. Hi, Logan. How was the flight? She asked. I picked up Mr. Parker, I replied. But before I could say more, she scolded her husband. Now be quiet, James. You heard what the doctor said. I can tell him to be quiet now, and he can't argue. Doctor's orders. She winked at me. We sat and chatted while James drifted in and out of sleep. Every time we thought he was out, a nurse would come in to check his vitals or adjust his medication. Mrs. Parker told me the motorhome was parked nearby, and their grandchildren had been with them. Their grandson had flown home, but their granddaughter was packing to return with me once James was discharged. Just as we finished talking, the granddaughter walked in carrying 2 suitcases. She was about my age, attractive, and clearly uninterested in me. After a brief exchange with her grandmother, Mrs. Parker turned to me. Vanessa has been driving our car for the last week, she said. She'll take you to the bus to get it ready. Vanessa didn't seem too thrilled. Vanessa, stop it. You'll be fine, Mrs. Parker added. She doesn't want to go back with you, Logan. She thinks she should stay with us. By the way, Mrs. Parker continued, your boss said you might need a few extra days and suggested traveling through Yellowstone. We promised Vanessa we'd do that on the way home. I'll see what I can do, I replied. As we were leaving, Mrs. Parker handed me a letter authorizing me to take the bus across the border and kissed me on the cheek. Thanks for helping. Be careful. Vanessa and I drove to the RV park in silence. She grunted and ignored me when I tried to make conversation. When we reached the bus, she went inside, taking the car keys with her. I asked for them, but she tossed them at me, and I barely dodged them. What's your problem? I muttered as I picked them up. Fed up, I hooked up the car to the bus. After a short break, I thought about grabbing a cold beer, so I went inside to see if the Parkers had any. No beer? I asked. I'm not your maid, Vanessa snapped as she closed the fridge and stormed off. That was it. I was done with all the women in my life. Elaine, Brenda, my mom, and now Vanessa. Mrs. Parker was the only one still remotely civil, but even that was wearing thin. I disconnected the power and water, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. By 8 p.m., I had crossed into the U.S. and cleared customs. Vanessa had to step outside for the border check before returning to the bedroom. I was ready to get this trip over with. By 7 a.m. the next day, we were in Burley, Idaho. I'd stopped a few times overnight for coffee and sandwiches, but I was tired and irritable. Vanessa sat in silence next to me for a while before finally speaking. I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat? I snapped, remembering how she treated me the night before. I'm not your damn maid, I said, pressing the gas pedal harder. She glared at me and stormed off to the bedroom. By 9 a.m., I needed to stop at a rest area. When I came back from the bathroom, I saw her getting off the bus. If you get off, you can't get back on, I said, starting the engine. By noon, I was sore from driving, so I pulled into a parking lot between 2 trucks and collapsed on the couch. I passed out almost instantly. When I woke up to the hum of the Cummins diesel engine, I realized we were moving. Checking the time, I saw I'd been asleep for 5 hours. Vanessa was driving fast. After watching her for a bit, I figured she knew what she was doing. Her grandfather had obviously taught her well. I made some coffee and sat in the passenger seat. We drove in silence for 2 hours, but I started to get worried about the fuel. We had been driving for about 25 hours, averaging 60 miles per hour, and had covered around 1,500 miles at 8 mpg. We were almost out of fuel. Hey, we should stop for gas, I said. She didn't respond. I tried again. We need fuel. Still nothing. Finally, she snapped. I took care of it while you were snoring. Surprised, I went back to the couch and fell asleep again. I never saw her eat, drink, or use the bathroom during the trip, but she managed everything while I slept. After another 3 hours, we stopped at a truck stop in Dumas, Texas. It was past 10 p.m. I made sandwiches, grabbed coffee, and took the wheel, heading for Houston. I drove through the night, only stopping once for a bathroom break and some snacks. By 8 a.m., I pulled into the dealership in Houston. I needed a break, so I went downstairs to the restroom. It had been less than 40 hours since we'd gone through customs, but it felt like days. When I came out of the restroom, I saw the Parker's car pulling out. The window was down, and I got an unsavory gesture from Vanessa. I returned it, then made myself coffee in the break room before crashing on the couch. I didn't stir until 3 p.m., when I woke up and found a note from my boss saying he wanted to see me. I headed to his office and knocked. You're monopolizing the break room, he said, half joking. I got a call from Mrs. Parker. She wanted to know how you survived driving with her granddaughter. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He shrugged. Apparently, Vanessa was a pain the entire trip. The Parkers didn't want her with them, and the grandson left because he couldn't handle her anymore. Mrs. Parker was impressed you didn't strangle her. I smirked. I wanted to, believe me. He laughed. Anyway, they're glad you made it back safely. Mr. Parker will be discharged soon, and they want us to service the bus. They're even talking about buying it. That's great, I said. I thought they might sell it. He shook his head. Not a chance. Now, go home and get some rest. The break room needs a break from you. After just 3 days, it felt like I'd been gone longer. I showered, shaved, and slept for almost 30 hours. When I finally checked my phone, I realized I hadn't even thought about it. I dug through my clothes from the trip, looking for it, but my phone wasn't there. I called my boss. Hey, can you check the break room in the coach for my phone? I think I left it somewhere. He called back a few minutes later, confirming there was no luck. Damn, I muttered to myself. How many customer calls did I miss? I went to the dealership and caught up with a few client messages. By noon, I was heading back to my cubicle after grabbing coffee when I saw Vanessa walk into the break room. I ducked into the staff area, waiting patiently for about 10 minutes. The loudspeaker then called my name, and I took my time finishing my coffee before heading to my boss's office. As he greeted me, he mentioned that Vanessa Parker was there to return my cell phone, which I had left in her grandparents' car. Just as he was speaking, his phone rang, and he stepped away to take the call. I gave Vanessa a nod and followed her into the showroom. She handed me my phone, but I hesitated, not reaching for it immediately. After a few steps, she placed it on a nearby table. Am I really that bad? She asked. Yes, I replied, keeping my distance. She didn't say anything else and left. Back at my desk, I was deep in thought when a loud crash caught my attention. I looked outside and saw a car accident. When I rushed over to check, I saw Vanessa was involved. She was injured, but not in immediate danger. Medics were tending to her when she looked up and smiled. You always catch me at my best, she said before passing out. The EMTs took her to the hospital, and I called the Parkers to update them, assuring them she was okay. Mr. Parker's response was cold. A broken arm, too bad it wasn't her neck. Mrs. Parker asked me to call Vanessa's parents, which I did. Later, I noticed 54 messages on my phone, mostly from my mother, Brenda, clients, and one from Andrew Wallace. I set up appointments with the clients and ignored the rest. After leaving work at 5 p.m., I stopped by the hospital. At the information desk, I found Vanessa's room, where her parents were already visiting. Her mom introduced me to Ralph and Joanna Parker. They were friendly, but Vanessa's dad joked about how much she talked about our trip. Vanessa won't stop talking about it, her mom said, which made me chuckle, recalling how unbearable she could be. After a brief conversation, I said my goodbyes, but Vanessa's dad stopped me to thank me for calling them. I nodded and left, feeling a bit out of place. Back home, I debated calling my mother but decided against it. I had been ignoring both her and Brenda's attempts to reach out. Even my stepfather called, but when he tried to pass the phone to my mother, I quickly ended the conversation. A few days later, I received divorce papers from my attorney sent to the address Brenda had given me. Her signature was bold and written in red marker, and there was no mention of her pregolane, if it was real. In 2 months, I would be free. I started considering staying single, which also made me think about my current celibacy. I hadn't been with anyone in so long that I practically rushed to the bathroom to shower and get ready for dinner. Just as I finished getting dressed, the phone rang. Hello? I answered. Hi, Logan. It's Dodie Parker. Hi, Mrs. Parker. How's James doing? I asked. Call me Dodie, she replied warmly. He's doing great. He's even planning our next trip to Colorado, although I'm a little nervous about how he'll handle the mountains. Don't worry, Dodie. His trainer will make sure he's safe as long as he doesn't try to speed, I reassured her. That's what he says, she chuckled. He's been reading all about mountain driving. I laughed. Well, I might need some Valium before we go. She laughed too, and I could hear the warmth in her voice. I liked James and Dodie. They were a good couple. Anyway, she continued, we're having a barbecue this Friday at 6 o'clock to celebrate James's recovery. Bring your wife. We'd love to meet her. I froze for a moment, realizing I'd never mentioned my personal life to them. Vanessa probably hadn't either, so they didn't know I was almost divorced. Thanks, Dodie, I said, regaining my composure. I'd love to come. It was a great week at work. I sold 3 vans, including a high-end bus previously owned by a country star, which earned me an excellent commission. I arrived at the Parker estate on Friday at 6 p.m. The house was impressive, and their garage housed the boat I had driven over from Vancouver. A valet parked my car, which felt strange, but I went along with it. Inside, there were about 50 guests. Dodie greeted me with a hug, and immediately asked where my wife was. I'm in the process of getting a divorce, I told her. She pulled me back and said, "Your wife is an idiot," before wrapping her arm around me and leading me toward the crowd. When she mentioned introducing me to some nice young ladies, I knew I didn't belong. I decided to stay only briefly, finishing my brisket and beer. As I was about to leave, I spotted Vanessa running away from a guy. I should have expected her to be here, but I didn't. She grabbed my hand before I could slip away. "Come on, Logan," she said, pulling me inside toward the library. "Yes, the library," I muttered. Once inside, she looked at me, clearly upset. "This guy's an a-hole," she said. "I have a behavior problem, and I need help." I started to walk out, but she called after me. "Where are you going?" "I'm leaving," I replied, heading for the door. "Before you kick me out?" she asked, almost pleading. "Because I agree with him," I said, turning back slightly. "He shouldn't have said that in front of everyone," I added. "Someone had to say it." "Damn it, Logan. You're supposed to be on my side," she snapped, frustration clear in her voice. "The only nice thing you ever said to me was while you were lying in the street, bleeding," I retorted, my words sharp. She slumped into a chair, and I stood still, not looking at her. "How's the arm?" I asked, trying to ease the tension. "It itches like hell," she muttered, then pulled out a tool from her cast that looked like a back scratcher. "I have to go," I said, heading for the door. "Logan," she called after me. I turned back slightly. "If I promise to behave, will you have dinner with me?" she asked softly. I paused before replying, "Vanessa, I'm going through a divorce. I don't need the extra stress, and I'm likely to do something that'll make things worse, so no, dinner's not a good idea." Saturday morning, I packed up and left. Later that day, my mom showed up at my door, and I let her in. "I've been thinking it over, and I agree with you," she said. "There are things we can compromise on, but faithfulness in marriage isn't one of them. You reminded me of the pain your father caused, and no one should go through that. I'm sorry for pushing you to get back with Brenda. I was selfish, only thinking about the baby and the idea of being a grandmother. Please forgive me." I forgave her, and we hugged. We chatted for another hour before she left. On Monday morning, my phone rang. "Logan Carter." "Good morning, Logan. It's Andrew Wallace. I have news." "What's the news?" I asked. "Ethan Smith called to ask for his job back, and they said no," Andrew replied. I laughed. "Just thought you might want to know." "Thanks, Andrew," I said, hanging up. Now I was on a first-name basis with him. Around noon, the Parkers' carriage pulled into the yard. I was with customers, so I couldn't greet them right away. 30 minutes later, after walking my clients to their car, I made my way to the bus. Vanessa opened the door. "Hi, come on in," she said. I stepped inside, avoiding the driver's seat. Once seated, I noticed the smell of lasagna from the kitchen. Vanessa handed me a glass of wine. "Clink," she said, holding up her glass. We both took a sip. It was a great wine. I thought I'd offer lunch instead of dinner. Also, I figured it'd be better to talk privately instead of embarrassing or pissing you off in public, she said. I asked my grandparents if I could use the bus, and when I explained why, they agreed. They just made me promise not to drive off if I got mad. "You said when, not if," I teased. "I know you well," she replied with a smile. I expected an argument, but Vanessa stayed calm. She took another sip of wine and turned to fill her glass. "I hope you're hungry. I made lasagna this morning. It's really good, if I do say so myself," she said, moving around the kitchen despite her cast. The doorbell rang. "Bring it in, please," she called. I went to open the door, and my boss stood there. I waved it off awkwardly. "It's okay," I said, closing the door and returning to my seat. Vanessa moved naturally around the small kitchen, clearly comfortable. I smiled, but I knew one of us would probably do something to annoy the other eventually. She asked me to sit at the dining table, and I did. The bus was tight on space, but the living area expanded with sliding drawers. We ate, chatted, and finished a bottle of wine. Neither of us had gotten on each other's nerves yet. After a couple of hours, I decided to head back to work. "Thanks, Vanessa. It was a nice surprise, and the food was great." "My pleasure," she said, walking me to the door. As I stepped down, she leaned in and kissed me gently. We both paused, shocked. "Is dinner still off the table?" she asked, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. "How about tonight? Let's say 7 o'clock. She gave me her address, and I started to leave. But we kissed again. It took me another 10 minutes to finally leave. I stepped off the bus and saw 6 faces, including my boss, watching me through the exhibit hall window. As soon as they realized I saw them, they scattered, except for my boss, who opened the door for me. Well, I'm off to get ready for my date tonight, I said, laughing. 10 minutes later, Vanessa drove the bus out of the parking lot as we headed to her house. My phone rang. Logan Carter. So, you managed not to eliminate each other? Tim's voice came through. Hey, Tim. I think James is listening. We want to hear your side, James said. I'm a gentleman. I don't kiss and tell, I laughed. Horse crap, James interrupted. Watch your language, Tim scolded. Logan, she continued. When Vanessa asked to borrow the coach, she was nervous but finally confessed it was to make you lasagna. I had no idea she could cook. She made you lasagna? I asked, surprised. Yep, Tim replied. She just knows. Well, I guess she's full of surprises, I said. Vanessa's tough on the outside, but she's a good girl at heart. She's been hurt a lot and uses that attitude as armor. Just don't hurt her, okay? Understood, I said, though I thought James was overreacting. Don't worry, I replied. Before I could hang up, my phone rang again. Logan, it's Brenda. The anger hit me instantly, but I forced myself to stay calm. What's up, Brenda? I just wanted you to know, she began, her voice tight. Elaine kicked Ethan out, but he came back today and battered her up. She's in the hospital, Logan. Her nose is broken, and she's in ICU. Ethan's in jail. My heart sank. What about the baby? I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. She lied about it, Brenda replied, her tone flat. It's gone. And honestly, I'm done with her, Logan. She's still my wife until the divorce is final, I said. She stopped being your wife the day she signed those papers, Brenda retorted. Goodbye. When we reached Vanessa's gated community, the guard acted surprised when I told him I was visiting her. He laughed as he called her to check and wished me luck as he opened the gate. At dinner, I learned Vanessa liked steak and potatoes, medium rare ribeye with blue cheese and baked potatoes. I was impressed by how she handled cutting the steak with her arm in a cast. She ate half, then switched to her drink, and the waiter offered to pack the leftovers. I didn't know you had doggy bags here, I joked. The waiter grinned. First time for everything. As we left, the same guard was at the gate, but this time his expression was less amused. I glanced at Vanessa and joked, I don't have many dates, and he's not used to me coming home in the same car I left in. Usually, I take a cab. When we got to her house, she invited me inside. What would you like to drink? She asked. A gin and tonic, I replied. We sat in silence for a while, and then she made her move. I got the hint, and we ended up spending the night together. The next morning, I called my boss. I won't be in today, I said. Why not? He asked. I'm still on my date from last night, I replied. He laughed. The days that followed were unexpectedly calm, as if the storm that had consumed my life had finally passed. The finality of my decision settled over me, heavy but reassuring. I was done chasing answers and seeking closure from the people who had broken my trust. I had moved on. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but decisively. Vanessa and I continued seeing each other. Over time, her sharp edges softened, revealing a humor and depth that complemented her fiery nature. I discovered in her a shared resilience, a refusal to be defined by past mistakes. Our differences led to spirited debates, but they became a source of growth rather than conflict. She challenged me in ways I hadn't known I needed, and I found myself cautiously allowing hope to bloom again. Elaine's presence in my life faded, like the echoes of a distant storm. I received updates through Brenda, but they felt like distant news, not personal revelations. I no longer felt anger, only a strange, muted gratitude for the lessons learned in the past that led me here. My work at the dealership thrived. The Parkers became regulars, and their enthusiasm for life was a constant reminder of what a true partnership looked like. They often invited Vanessa and me to dinner, supporting us unwaveringly as they encouraged our relationship. It was at one of these dinners that Tim leaned over and whispered, "You've been through enough, Logan. Let yourself be happy." I still thought of my mother and her misguided attempts to smooth over my life's jagged edges. Our relationship had improved, though her mentions of Elaine or the past still caused tension. But I had learned to set boundaries, to choose the people and stories I allowed into my life. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself parked outside Vanessa's house on the Parkers' couch. She had invited me over for lasagna. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of garlic and herbs greeted me. She smiled, her cast finally removed, and raised a glass of wine to new beginnings. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly with each sip. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to find out. Dear listeners, Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.